All right, so now we're going to try and crack this thing open, and hopefully one of these filters I bought will fit. This is a Vapor-Matic. What's really cool about this one is it's made in England. England. All right, so maybe this is the one we need. It looks a little small, but yeah, that's what they sent me, so hopefully it fits. That came loose very easily, but I will say I've been, move this catch pan a little bit, pleasantly surprised by how easily most fasteners have come loose on this machine. Oh, splooge. So either this thing holds a ton of fluid, or somebody sent me the wrong filter. Ah, crap, I think I see a filter in there. Oh well, hopefully there's a number on it that I can pull off and order the right one. Oh my, what is all this stuff stuck on here? There's like gobs of, I don't even know what. And a lot of sediment in the bottom of this thing. All right, it's good we're getting in here. All right, so from the tiny amount of research I did, I will say that it appears, I cannot completely confirm, but it appears as though Massey switched from those large, generous filters to these tiny little ones at some point, and this old machine uses the old style filter. So I made a spacer, so this should work, and hopefully we can get this set up in here. Oh yeah, it's going on. Nice, we got it. All right, filter on the other side should be fun. So this is something I've never changed before, although that's not saying much. This is a filter for an oil cooler because this tractor actually has on it, from the factory. Whoa, I don't like where this is going. An oil cooler, because, I guess because it's an industrial tractor. I can't imagine the regular Massey Ferguson 35s had these. Alright, let's see. Work with me thing. Oh, this is really on here. This probably has not come off in many, many years. I don't know if I've ever seen a filter this stuck before. Dang it, I was just talking about how easy everything is coming apart. This is what I've done. This right here. Would not be happening had I kept my stupid mouth shut, but no. Ugh. So I got this off the tractor. You guys can tell me which side is the side that we pressure wash and which side isn't. Now, it appears as though, unlike on some filters where there's a bolt that runs through and holds this on, this part actually screws into this part. So, I am going to hit this with a little propane torch here and hopefully just heat it up a little bit. Alright, we're going to try it now that we've put some heat into it. Really not very much, because I would prefer not to be melting seals and whatnot in here. If this doesn't work, I'll hit it with the big torch, and then we'll really cook it. Oh, hey, how about that? Yeah, so that is, well, it's great to have even just a little torch like that around. You'd be surprised what you can do with it. Now, the reason that this works for anybody who doesn't know is because when you take things that are stuck together and you apply heat, they expand and contract in different ways relative to each other, and that differential action can work to pop apart whatever rust or, you know, crud or a combination of the two or whatever is holding your junk together. All right, I put a big pan directly under the vise, so if this splooge is everywhere, it won't be a big deal. Hey! Wow, there's a surprisingly minimal amount of crud in there. Now, one thing I will say, this is built like a tank. You know, I was holding this with one hand and unscrewing it with the other off the tractor, and when it let go, it literally fell out of my hands. This filter assembly weighs like 20 pounds. You know, you look at this and you think it's just stamped or, you know, die-cast aluminum or something, but no, solid cast iron, and this is probably close to 3/8 thick. Man, built to last. All right, this does appear, famous last words, to be the filter that I bought. So I've been working on the power steering setup for this tractor, and we have some major updates. Not only do we have these 1/2-inch NPT hoses installed with these fittings, but now we have basically all the rest of these as well. Now, one thing I made it a point to do was set up these fittings so that any standard NPT ends hose can go on here, because pretty much every hose I took off the thing, you know, you'd have JIC on this end and like 3/4 NPT over here, or for these smaller ones like 1/4 inch on one end and then a compression fitting brazed onto the other. Really friggin' inconvenient. As a side note, a lot of you guys already know this, generally you don't want to use brass fittings like this on any type of hydraulic setup, However, this power steering setup should only be roughly 200 to 300 PSI, and some of the factory fittings I took off, they're brass, the same exact style. So I made a little bit of an exception of that rule for this project here. So hopefully only half of these things will leak, and we'll know as soon as we fire it up. So now we're dealing with wiring this thing, which is sort of a mess because I actually want to drive it, but we can't when the battery's sitting right down here and we need that to power the distributor. And man, you know, if I was the type to do so, I could swear that I have removed just feet of wiring off this thing, just with stuff that's getting in the way of other things that I'm trying to do. But we're gonna try and do this up right. I picked up a key switch here. We have a battery disconnect here, some LED lights as well, and basically let's just try to remove the last of the old crap, and we will see if we can get this thing wired up slightly more betterish. Man, you know you're working on farm equipment when you need bolt cutters to do an electrical repair. So our next problem is this hole for the key switch is a little small for the key switch that I actually bought for this thing. So we are gonna use what is a relatively new discovery to me, and it is one of these step drills. These aren't really anything fancy, they're kind of the cheap Chinese ones, but I bought, I don't know, like 4 or 5 of them for like 20 bucks on Amazon. And I don't use them every day, but on jobs like this, the ones I have used, they've been pretty good. Yeah, let's see if we can ream this out a little bit and make our switch fit. Sure, it's nice having a 2-speed drill. Yeah, so close! Nice. Yeah, probably not the greatest thing ever, but sure beats sitting there all day with a die grinder. Alright, so the next problem is this old switch right by where the old and new ignition switches both go. The problem is I was trying to wrestle this off from the backside. I don't know if y'all can see that back there, but I ended up breaking off the back part of the switch, and this is just pure corrosion and rust. So maybe we can use the pine tree drill here to ream that out so stuff actually comes off. Oh, sweet. Wow, that was a lot easier than I thought. So I've decided that I want to install a pretty heavy-duty battery disconnect switch here. So the battery sits about there. I want this thing to be right about here for a number of reasons. I want it kind of protected from, you know, tree branches and the like scraping on it. Not really a concern down here. I'd also prefer if it wasn't the most visible thing in the world, because this way, you know, not only does it keep the battery from going dead if I don't use tobacco every day, which I probably won't. I plan to use this on a handful of larger projects, but definitely not, you know, regularly. The other thing is this makes it sort of a theft deterrent. You know, obviously that won't slow down anyone who, you know, like the type who watches these videos, you know, because they'll be like, oh, I bet there's a battery disconnect on this. But people that actually know trades generally aren't the type to run around and steal backhoes from people in the middle of the night. So we're gonna try to get down in there. I will say, this is the job for the right angle drill, if there ever was such a thing. Next one. Perfect. Magical moment, everybody. This is the last new hose to replace, hopefully, on the front half. Well, not just the front half, everything but the backhoe on this machine. And we are tightening it down with my old as dirt Korean-made Allied brand 1 1/16 wrench, which I bought on eBay dirt cheap. And just like that, it is in place. Now, I've had my ups and downs replacing these 3 hoses. It took me 2 orders of fittings from Surplus Center in order to get the right ones, and then the first hoses I bought were too short, so I had to friggin' send those back as well. And then finally today I was able to change out these 2 hoses pretty well. These are JIC fittings on the backhoe from the factory, but they're female ones, so we had to convert them to male with this adapter. Problem is that this one up on top, which I guess has been subjected to more rainwater over the years than the 2 underneath it, would not come loose. I don't mean it was hard to get loose or what, I mean physically this the original hose was on here, and this line would not separate under any circumstances. I spent hours out here alternating between torquing on these things as hard as I could and squirting PB in there and hitting them with the torch and repeating in endless cycles of this. Finally gave up, sawed off the steel fitting here, and then I took the end off the hose that was here. This end was here because this is of course a male JIC fitting. Bored it out on the lathe, stuck it on here, and TIG brazed it in place. So hopefully that will fit. Dang, that was a lot of hoses. So here's where we are with this thing, and this is where I'm gonna split the hose replacing video, because the next thing to do is this massive friggin' backhoe and change out all the hoses that are in and on this thing, including the one that's split in here, which is why when you press down on one of these levers, it's just whoosh, oil just straight out the bottom of this thing in huge quantities in seconds. This is gonna be fun because we have to let the backhoe down, and I guess I'm gonna like take the front end loader on the 7060 and use it to like support this and bring it down and set it down, so there's no risk of this falling on me and crushing me, and that would be probably bad for future video production. But we have managed to get a lot done just in this episode. Now, one thing I've started doing is I bought some of this nylon hydraulic hose covering. This stuff is legit. You know, when I was trying to fit it onto these hoses, now obviously not all the hoses are gonna have this because this arrived like, you know, a week after the hoses did for some reason. I bought it from a separate company. What's really great about this stuff is it protects the hoses from sunlight, and that seems to be about the #1 killer on them, because the sun, what it does is it dries out the rubber, it causes it to split like that and get all weather cracked, and then obviously it just falls off. And the other thing is having hoses that bend. I mean, it happens sooner or later, but when things are exposed to the sun, it happens ridiculously faster than it otherwise would. So this stuff protects the hoses from that. It also protects it from abrasion, and it does a really good job of this. I tried to cut this stuff with my pocket knife and physically could not. Now, my knife is not the sharpest thing in the world. You know, I use it a lot. I really need to resharpen it, but still, physically, I could not get the blade through this. And even using a very sharp razor blade on this box cutter here, it was quite difficult to make it through that. So I'm gonna make it a point to cover other hydraulic hoses with it in the future. So, all right, let's have a quick recap of what we've done. We've replaced all the hoses up to there. We replaced the hoses on the outriggers. I installed LED lights on this thing, and not only that, I mounted them on a spring system. So while I'm sitting there running this thing, it's really easy. You can just move these around, position them however you need to. And I used an extra nut in there so they shouldn't actually loosen up, so we retain this nice little bobblehead look thing going on. More new hoses up under here, including that fitting which we fabric cobbled in the shop. We got more new hoses everywhere. 12 volt, basically a 1-wire alternator conversion. It's technically a 3-wire, so you have to run this jumper cable to get what most people refer to as 1-wire performance out of it. We have that. We have new hoses everywhere, all around this thing. Hopefully, wrong way. Hopefully, we are basically one more build video away from this thing being done. Some of these hoses, they look like they probably won't be that bad to get to. Others, for like the main cylinder that ends here and is physically all inside this is gonna suck. The good news is, you know, right now it's held in place with this jankety, rusty bolt with nothing on the other end of it. That's literally the only thing holding this arm up. So, you know, we're just gonna have to find a way to lay this thing down somewhat safely-ish and try it out. So, all right, let's see what we can do.